Hey, this is Sean Morrow at the University of Texas Student Activity Center. I'm going to give you a quick rundown on the process of getting some sound into this Allen and Heath analog mixer, and we'll also show how to get sound out of it and into our large PA speakers. So we're going to hook up a wired SM58 microphone, standard vocal microphone, and hook that up into the XLR microphone input of channel 5 today. I got some other mics plugged into 4, so we'll get into that in a little bit. So on this mixer, as any other mixer, anytime you're connecting a new input source to the mixer, first of all, you'll make sure nothing's turned up anywhere. Turn your gain all the way down. And on this mixer, this button right here says PFL by it. Stands for pre-fade listen. When you press that button, it turns the main meters here into an input meter for whatever is PFL'd. So if I press that button in, now these meters are going to show how much of the microphone signal is coming into channel 5. Up here is my gain. Gain is what you use at the beginning of the channel to increase or decrease the amount of signal, the strength of the signal coming into the channel. So I'm looking for a good healthy signal. I don't want it way down here, but I don't want it overloading and distorting. So I'm trying to get a good healthy signal, maybe just around 0. So as I start talking into this microphone, I'm going to grab my gain knob, and if we watch these meters here, we'll start seeing some input come. There we go. Hey, look, it's working. Hello, 1, 2, check 1, 2. All right, very good, a little high there, so let's give it probably its loudest signal that it's going to get from somebody. That sounds pretty good. Cool, so now we can release the meters from being an input meter, and now the meters go back to being the main left and right, or the main output meters. Notice on the channel itself, there's a little green LED. If any audio activity is detected by the channel now, we can see that it'll show some activity. So that's really helpful when you're trying to figure out which microphone is picking up something, which instruments are turned on, and that sort of thing, without having separate meters for everything. All right, so once that's done, we could add it to our output. That's about it. On this mixer, we have a left and a right output, and there are XLR outputs for those on the back of the mixer. There's also a mono output. The mono output is a combination of the output of the left and right levels. So if I have my speakers connected to the mono output, but the left and right is turned all the way down, nothing will get to the speakers. If I have my speakers connected to the mono output and left and right are turned up, still nothing will get to the speakers. If I had speakers hooked up to left and right, they'd be getting to the speakers now. If I want to use the mono output, I have to have the left and right up, and then I can adjust my speaker volume with the mono output. In addition to getting our sound to the main speakers, we also will need to get some sound to the musicians on stage, for the small speakers on stage called monitor speakers. We do that with what's called the auxiliary sends. An auxiliary send is essentially tapping into the signal and diverting whatever amount of that we need to somewhere else. So whereas if I had a bunch of instruments and vocals on stage, and this sort of combination of levels made it sound good for our audience, these auxiliary 1 knobs are how I set up the same sort of mix to another output. So all the signals come in, and you mix them and balance them here to go to your main speakers. Same thing with the auxiliary mixes. All of the signals come in, and you balance the levels of your auxiliaries to get that mix. So the singer on stage may not need to hear all the different instruments. He may only want to hear his vocal and maybe the keyboard. So I could turn up his vocal and wherever we had the keyboard. So this is a different mix than this. I think about it like this. An auxiliary mix is kind of like you're baking cakes for a bunch of different people, but they all want maybe a little bit different proportions of the ingredients in their particular version of the recipe. So while our audience wants this cake, our singer may want this cake. The key thing about auxiliary sends is that they are pre-fader. What that means is no matter what I do to adjust the mix for the main audience, it's not going to adjust these levels because they are pre-fader. They are set and they are tapping into the signal before it gets to the fader. So that's kind of key. If the singer is so happy with their mix on stage, they don't want it to be messed up when you start making it sound good for the audience. We also have an equalization section where you can adjust treble and mid-range and bass frequencies to sculpt out the tone to where it sounds good. Also on each channel is a 48-volt button for providing phantom power for condenser mics, our push-to-talk mics, for example. There's a high-pass filter, which is really useful for a vocal channel to get it. It's also called a low cut on some mixers, and like the name implies, it lets the higher frequencies pass through. It cuts the lower frequencies, so things like air conditioning or traffic or stage rumble, things like that aren't contributing, that you don't want to be picked up. You can kind of help eliminate that by rolling those off. That's kind of the main things I want to cover about the front. Well, also on each, we'll go across through these buttons too. There's a mute button. If a microphone's not being used, you can mute it so it's not accidentally picking up stuff. And again, these PFL channels. Also, this red knob LED will function as a peak channel. So just like the green one, now I'm talking into that microphone now, and just like the green knob indicates that there is something coming in. If the gain is too high, that red light will start to light up, and we're peaking the channel, so we know we have it too loud. Kind of handy. Some of our mixers do not have a meter section at all. All they have is the red LED to let you know that you've turned it up too loud. So the way you set the gain on those type of mixers is obviously you can't tell that you have it at a good level, but you know when you have it at a bad level. So you kind of go ahead and make it turn red, and then turn down a little bit until it's not red anymore. And you can assume that you have a pretty strong signal without overloading the circuit. So I could test that by pressing my PFL button here. And hey, what do you know? We're getting a pretty strong signal. I could even stand to turn it down just a bit there. All right, that's about it for the front of this board for the basics. Your gain, your input metering, and our auxiliary sends and our main outputs. So stand by for another video.